My 6-year-old son went to Disney with my ex-wife, her new husband, and her parents. My phone rang. This is Disney staff. Your child is at Lost and Found. The words didn't register at first. Bryson was supposed to be having the time of his life. Princesses, roller coasters, overpriced turkey legs. Instead, he was sitting in some fluorescent office waiting for strangers to figure out where his family went. Is he okay? My voice came out sharper than I intended. He's fine, sir. A bit upset, but physically fine. We found him near the haunted mansion. He said his family left without him. My grip tightened on the phone. I'm in Connecticut. His mother is there. Delilah Henderson. Her husband is Trevor something. We've been trying to reach the contacts listed, sir. No answer yet. Of course not. Delilah probably had her phone buried in that enormous purse she carried, too busy posing for photos to notice her son wasn't in them anymore. I could picture Trevor with his pressed khakis and constant need to optimize every moment, checking his watch, calculating wait times, completely oblivious. Can you put him on? There was shuffling, then Bryson's small voice. Dad? Hey, buddy. You're okay. They're going to find Mom, all right? I told them I wanted to go on the teacups again, but nobody listened. Then I looked around and everyone was gone. His voice cracked. Grandma was supposed to hold my hand. Delilah's mother, Patricia, who'd made it abundantly clear during the custody proceedings that I was an inadequate parent, too focused on work, too inflexible, not capable of providing the enriching experiences a child needed. And now she'd lost him in the most crowded place on earth. Listen to me. Stay with the nice people there. Mom will come get you soon. But even as I said it, something felt wrong. Delilah was neurotic about Bryson, checked on him constantly, sometimes to the point of suffocation. For her to not notice he was missing for long enough that staff had to intervene, that wasn't like her, no matter how distracted she got. I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. Trevor's phone rang endlessly. Patricia didn't answer either. The Disney employee came back on. Sir, we still haven't been able to reach anyone. Do you have any other contacts? Keep trying. I'm looking at flights now. I was already pulling up airline websites, calculating drive times, wondering if I could make it there faster by car. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Delilah's number. Except it wasn't from Delilah. Mr. Garrett, this is Trevor. There's been a situation. We're at the hospital. Delilah collapsed. Her parents are with her. I completely forgot Bryson was waiting for us at the ride exit. Is he? My hands went cold. I called him immediately. What hospital? What happened? Trevor's voice was strained, unfamiliar. They think it's her heart. We were walking toward Space Mountain and she went down. I'm so sorry about Bryson, I wasn't thinking. The paramedics said, is she stable? They're running tests. Her dad's in there with her now. Patricia is losing it. I should have remembered Bryson, I closed my eyes. I'm booking a flight. Tell Disney I'm coming. Don't leave him alone. I'm heading back there now. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, staring at the airline confirmation. Delilah in the hospital. Bryson abandoned in a theme park. And somewhere in my gut, a question I couldn't shake. What kind of heart episode makes a healthy 34-year-old woman collapse without warning? My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Mr. Garrett, this is Dr. Ainsworth from Orlando Regional. I need to speak with you about your son's mother. There are some irregularities in her blood work we need to discuss, and given the custody arrangement, you're listed as next of kin for medical decisions if she's incapacitated. How soon can you get here? The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. What kind of irregularities? Her pause lasted too long. I'd prefer to discuss this in person, but given the circumstances, Mrs. Henderson's potassium levels are dangerously low. Combined with what appears to be cardiac arrhythmia, we're looking at a serious electrolyte imbalance. I need to know if she's been taking any medications, supplements, or if she's had any recent illnesses. We've been divorced for 2 years. I wouldn't know about her medications. Her husband mentioned she'd been on a new fitness regimen, something about a cleanse. Do you know anything about that? I rubbed my eyes. Of course. Delilah had always been susceptible to wellness trends, convinced that the right combination of supplements and restrictive eating would fix whatever she thought was broken. She's done those before. Juice cleanses, that sort of thing. Never caused any problems. This appears to be more severe. We're running additional tests, but I need family history. Has she ever had heart issues? Her parents aren't being particularly forthcoming. Not that I know of. Look, I'm getting on a plane in 3 hours. Can she make medical decisions herself, or do I need to? She's conscious but disoriented. We've stabilized her for now, but depending on what the tests show, we may need to make some decisions quickly. Her husband has been helpful, but legally you're the one listed for emergency medical decisions regarding your son's welfare, and given her condition, I understand. I'll be there as soon as I can. After we hung up, I stood in my apartment, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. The flight wasn't until 8 p.m. 3 hours to pack, arrange coverage at work, and somehow process that Delilah, who'd walked out of our marriage claiming I was the one with control issues, might have crashed her system with whatever wellness protocol she'd convinced herself was necessary. I called my sister Vanessa, who lived 20 minutes away. Can you come over? I need to talk through something before I lose my mind. She arrived within 30 minutes, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago. Vanessa had never particularly liked Delilah, but she'd been diplomatic during the divorce, focusing on helping me adjust to the custody schedule rather than saying, I told you so. What happened? She set her purse down, already reading the stress on my face. I told her everything. Bryson lost at Disney, Delilah in the hospital, the doctor's call about electrolyte imbalances and cleanses. Vanessa sat down heavily on my couch. Jesus, is Bryson okay? Trevor went back to get him. They're supposed to stay at the hotel tonight. I'm flying down in a few hours. Do you want me to come with you? I considered it. Vanessa was practical, level-headed, and had a way of cutting through emotional noise that I desperately needed. But she also had 2 kids of her own, and a husband who traveled for work. I can't ask you to do that. You didn't ask, I offered. She pulled out her phone. Let me text Raymond. He's home this week, and my mother-in-law owes me about 17 favors. Vanessa, don't. You're about to walk into a hospital room with your ex-wife, her new husband, and her parents who think you're the devil. You need backup. She was right. Patricia and Gerald, Delilah's parents, had made the divorce as contentious as possible, convinced that I'd somehow failed their daughter by prioritizing my accounting job over the kind of lifestyle they thought she deserved. Never mind that their daughter had expensive tastes and no interest in budgeting. Never mind that I'd worked 60-hour weeks trying to keep up with her spending while she complained I was never home. Okay, I said finally. Thank you. By the time we landed in Orlando, it was nearly midnight. I'd called Trevor twice during the flight, once before takeoff, once after landing. Bryson was asleep in the hotel room. Delilah was still in the hospital, stable but under observation. Her parents had gone back to the hotel an hour ago, and Trevor was sitting in the waiting room, exhausted. Vanessa rented a car while I checked my phone compulsively. A text from Trevor. Room 407, 4th floor. She's awake if you want to see her. I didn't know if I wanted to see her. What I wanted was to grab Bryson, make sure he was okay, and figure out how to navigate whatever mess this had become. But Dr. Ainsworth had been clear. Depending on what the test showed, I might need to make decisions. And I couldn't do that without understanding what was actually happening. The hospital was quiet at this hour, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the soft beeping of machines. Trevor was in the waiting room like he'd said, slumped in a chair with a cold coffee in his hand. He looked up when we walked in, and for a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. How is she? I asked. Better. They've got her on IV fluids, electrolyte replacement. The doctor said she should be okay, but they want to keep her overnight. He stood up, awkward and uncertain. I'm really sorry about Bryson. I should have... Where is he now? Hotel. With Patricia and Gerald. They were going to wait up for you, but I told them you'd probably want to go straight to the hospital. I glanced at Vanessa, who gave me a look that said she'd handle logistics if I needed to deal with this. I want to see him first thing in the morning, before anyone else wakes up. Of course, I'll text you the room number. We stood there in the waiting room, 3 people connected by a 6-year-old boy, and a series of choices that had led us to this particular moment. Finally, Trevor cleared his throat. Do you want to see her? She's been asking about Bryson. I told her he's fine, but I think she needs to hear it from you. I didn't want to see Delilah. I wanted to rewind 3 years, back when our biggest fights were about whether to refinance the mortgage or how often to visit her parents. I wanted to undo whatever series of decisions had led her to collapse in the middle of a theme park, while our son wandered around looking for someone to hold his hand. But I followed Trevor down the hallway anyway. Room 407 was dim, just a small light over the bed. Delilah looked smaller than I remembered, her face pale against the white pillows. An IV ran into her arm, and monitors beeped softly beside her. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay. He's fine. Scared, but fine. Trevor's got him at the hotel. She closed her eyes. I didn't mean to. I don't know what happened. 1 minute we were walking, and then everything went sideways and I couldn't... The doctor said something about a cleanse. Her face flushed, even in the dim light. It was supposed to be healthy. My trainer recommended it. Just some supplements and cutting out processed foods. I didn't think, what kind of supplements? Just herbal things, for metabolism and energy. And I was doing the lemon water in the morning and cutting carbs and... She stopped, her voice breaking. I thought I was doing the right thing. I wanted to feel better, look better. Trevor's always so fit, and I pulled up a chair, exhausted. This was so typically Delilah, chasing some ideal of perfection without considering the consequences, convinced that the answer was always in the next diet, the next routine, the next version of herself that she'd manufacture through sheer willpower. The doctor said your potassium levels were dangerously low. Did your trainer tell you to cut out bananas? Leafy greens? The cleanse was mostly liquids for the first week. Smoothies in the morning, soup for dinner. I felt dizzy a few times, but I thought that was normal. Detoxing, you know? I didn't know. I'd never understood the appeal of starving yourself in the name of wellness, but Delilah had always been drawn to these things. In our marriage, it had been a constant source of tension. Her need for external validation through appearance, my frustration with the money and time she spent chasing it. You need to stop, I said quietly. Whatever you're doing, you need to stop before you hurt yourself worse. I know. Her voice was small. I'm sorry about Bryson. I can't believe we left him. I can't believe I didn't notice you were unconscious. You get a pass on that one. I leaned back in the chair. But Patricia was supposed to be watching him. Delilah's expression shifted, defensive. Mom was panicking. She thought I was dying. You can't blame her for... I can blame her for losing track of a 6-year-old in a crowded theme park. I kept my voice level, but the anger was there, simmering. She spent 2 years telling me I wasn't capable of taking care of him properly, and then she lets him wander off because she was too distracted to hold his hand. Don't, Delilah's voice sharpened. Don't use this to prove some point. My mother loves Bryson. She made a mistake. People make mistakes. Yeah, they do. I stood up. I'm getting him first thing in the morning. You focus on recovering. We'll figure out the rest later. I left before she could respond, before the old patterns could reassert themselves. Her defensiveness, my resentment, the circular arguments that never resolved anything. Vanessa was in the waiting room scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I walked in. How'd it go? About how you'd expect. I rubbed my face. Let's find a hotel. I want to be at their place by 7 tomorrow morning. We ended up at a Holiday Inn 10 minutes from the hospital. I barely slept, my mind cycling through scenarios. Bryson's small voice on the phone, Delilah's pale face in the hospital bed, Trevor's exhausted apology, the coming confrontation with Patricia and Gerald. At 6:30 a.m., I was in the shower. By 6:50, Vanessa and I were in the rental car, driving toward the address Trevor had texted. It was a resort hotel, the kind with a pool shaped like a lagoon and palm trees imported from somewhere more tropical. Patricia answered the door in her bathrobe, her face hardening when she saw me. He's still sleeping. I'd like to see him anyway. She didn't move. Trevor said you'd be by. I didn't think you meant this early. I've been flying all night. I want to see my son. Behind her, I could hear movement. Gerald appeared, already dressed despite the early hour. He'd always been more reasonable than his wife, less openly hostile, though no less convinced that I was somehow lacking. Let him in, Patricia. His voice was tired. It's been a long night for everyone. She stepped aside reluctantly. The suite was enormous, probably costing more per night than my monthly rent. Bryson was in one of the bedrooms, curled up under a comforter with cartoon characters on it. His face was peaceful in sleep, and for a moment, I just stood there, watching him breathe. Then his eyes opened. Dad, hey buddy. I sat down on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling? He sat up, rubbing his eyes. Is Mom okay? She's gonna be fine. She's in the hospital, but the doctors are taking good care of her. Can I see her? Maybe later today. Right now, I thought you and I could get some breakfast. Just us. His face brightened slightly. Can we get pancakes? Absolutely. Patricia appeared in the doorway. We already made plans to take him to breakfast. We thought, I appreciate that, I said, keeping my voice even. But I haven't seen my son in 2 weeks, and after what happened yesterday, I think he and I need some time together. We've been handling it just fine. He doesn't need you coming in and disrupting. Patricia, Gerald's voice was firm. Let it go. She looked like she wanted to argue, but something in her husband's expression stopped her. I helped Bryson get dressed, packed a small bag with his things, and we left before anyone could mount another objection. In the car, Bryson was quiet. Vanessa sat in the front passenger seat, giving us space. Finally, he spoke. I was really scared yesterday. I know, buddy. I'm sorry that happened. Grandma said she'd hold my hand, but then Mom fell down and everyone was running and I didn't know where to go. His voice was matter-of-fact, the way kids describe traumatic things when they're still processing. A lady with a Mickey Mouse shirt found me. She was nice. That was good that you stayed where you were. You did exactly the right thing. Trevor forgot about me. The words hung in the air. I wanted to defend Trevor, to say he'd been distracted, that emergencies make people forget things. But I also heard what Bryson wasn't saying, that he'd been forgotten, that the adults who were supposed to be watching him had all dropped the ball. He was worried about your mom, I said carefully. But you're right. He should have made sure you were safe first. That's what grown-ups are supposed to do. Would you have forgotten about me? The question hit harder than I expected. No, I wouldn't have forgotten about you. We got pancakes at a diner near the hotel. Bryson ordered chocolate chip, and I got him orange juice and let him have extra syrup even though Delilah would have rationed it. Vanessa told him about her kids, his cousins, and the fort they'd built in her backyard. Slowly, he relaxed, the tension leaving his small shoulders. My phone buzzed. Trevor, Patricia wants to know when you're bringing him back. I texted back, taking him to see Delilah at the hospital around noon. We'll figure out the rest after that. His response was immediate. She's not going to like that. Not my problem, I wrote, then deleted it. Instead, I'll keep you posted. At the hospital, Delilah was sitting up in bed, looking more alert than she had the night before. Her face lit up when she saw Bryson, and he ran to her, careful of the IV in her arm. They talked in low voices while I stood by the window, watching the Orlando skyline. Vanessa had gone back to the hotel to work on her laptop, giving us space. After a few minutes, Delilah looked at me. The doctor said I can go home tomorrow if my levels stay stable. Home to Connecticut or home to your hotel? We were supposed to stay through the weekend. The tickets were non-refundable, and Trevor thought. She stopped. But I don't know if I'm up for it. And after what happened with Bryson, maybe you should come home, I said. Get checked out by your regular doctor. Figure out what you're actually dealing with before you jump back into vacation mode. She bristled slightly. I know what I'm dealing with. I overdid it with the cleanse. The doctor already told me to stop the supplements and eat normally. It's not complicated. Delilah, you collapsed in the middle of a theme park. Your heart went into arrhythmia. That's pretty complicated. I don't need you lecturing me about my health. And there it was. The old dynamic, reasserting itself like gravity. Me trying to be practical, her hearing it as criticism. Her getting defensive, me getting frustrated. Bryson sat between us, quiet, absorbing everything. I took a breath. I'm not lecturing. I'm concerned. And I think Bryson's been through enough for one trip. She looked at our son, her expression softening. What do you think, sweetie? Do you want to stay and do more Disney, or would you rather go home? Bryson glanced between us. Can Dad come if we stay? Delilah's face did something complicated. I don't think. We didn't plan for that. The hotel room, I can get my own room, I said, surprising myself. If you want to stay and finish the trip, I'll stick around. Make sure everything goes smoothly this time. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. but maybe it would be good. For Bryson, she studied me, trying to figure out my angle. The truth was, I wasn't sure I had one. I just knew that the thought of getting back on a plane to Connecticut while Bryson stayed here, with people who'd already proven they could lose track of him, made my chest tight. Okay, she said finally. If you want to stay, you can stay. Trevor arrived an hour later with Patricia and Gerald in tow. Patricia's expression when she saw me was predictably cold, but she focused on Delilah fussing over her medications and asking pointed questions about the doctor's instructions. Gerald shook my hand, a gesture that felt more obligatory than warm, and Trevor looked relieved to see me there, as if my presence somehow diffused the tension. The doctor came in shortly after, a different one from Dr. Ainsworth. This one was younger, with a crisp white coat and a tablet she consulted frequently. Mrs. Henderson, your latest labs look much better. We're going to keep you one more night for observation, but if everything stays stable, you should be able to be discharged tomorrow morning. Can she travel? Trevor asked. I'd recommend staying local for a few days. Let her system fully stabilize before getting on a plane, and no intense physical activity. That includes walking around theme parks in 90-degree heat. Patricia jumped in. We can extend the hotel. Stay through the week if necessary. The doctor nodded. That would be wise. I'm also going to refer you to a cardiologist for a follow-up. The arrhythmia resolved with the electrolyte correction, but given your age and the severity of the episode, it's worth getting a full cardiac workup. After the doctor left, there was a moment of awkward silence. Finally, Gerald spoke. Well, I suppose we should talk about logistics. The hotel suite sleeps 6 comfortably. Garrett, if you want to stay with us, there's room. I appreciate that, but I've already booked a room at the Holiday Inn. I could feel Patricia's relief at my refusal. We spent the rest of the afternoon navigating the strange territory of being a blended family in crisis. Bryson wanted to go back to the hotel pool, so Trevor took him while Vanessa and I grabbed lunch at the hospital cafeteria. Patricia stayed with Delilah, and Gerald went back to the hotel to make phone calls about extending their reservations. This is surreal, Vanessa said, picking at her salad. You're voluntarily spending your vacation with your ex-wife and her in-laws. It's not a vacation. It's damage control. Still, she gave me a look. You know Patricia's going to find a way to make this your fault, right? Somehow, Delilah collapsing will become evidence that you're a bad influence, or that the stress of the divorce caused her health problems. Let her think what she wants. I'm here for Bryson. Are you sure that's the only reason? I looked at my sister. What's that supposed to mean? You still care about her. Not in a romantic way, but you care. You wouldn't be here otherwise. I didn't have a good response to that. The truth was complicated. I didn't love Delilah anymore. That had died somewhere in the last year of our marriage, buried under arguments about money and priorities and whose needs mattered more. But she was still Bryson's mother, still the person I'd once imagined growing old with. And seeing her in that hospital bed, small and scared, had triggered something I thought I'd moved past. It doesn't matter why I'm here, I said finally. I'm here. That's enough. The next 2 days passed in a strange limbo. Delilah was discharged from the hospital with strict instructions to rest, eat balanced meals, and follow up with a cardiologist when she got home. Trevor arranged for a suite at a different hotel, something with a kitchen so Delilah wouldn't be tempted by restaurant food. Patricia took charge of meal planning with the fervor of someone on a mission, preparing elaborate salads and lean proteins that Delilah picked at half-heartedly. I spent most of my time with Bryson. We went to the hotel pool, built sandcastles in the designated beach area, played mini-golf at the resort course. Vanessa flew home after the second day. Her kids needed her, and Raymond could only hold down the fort for so long. Before she left, she hugged me tight. Call me if you need anything, and don't let Patricia get in your head. I won't. I mean it. She's going to try to rewrite what happened, make it seem like you abandoned Delilah or you're being controlling by staying. Don't buy into it. She was right, of course. On the third day, while Bryson was napping and I was reading by the pool, Patricia found me. We need to talk, she said, settling into the chair next to mine without invitation. About what? About Bryson and this arrangement. She gestured vaguely at the hotel, at the situation. Trevor and Delilah appreciate you staying, but I think it's time we discuss what happens next. What happens next is we finish out the week here, then everyone goes home. Bryson comes back to Connecticut with me on schedule. Actually, Delilah and I were talking. Given everything that's happened, she thinks it might be better if Bryson stayed with her for a few extra weeks, to help her recover and to make up for the scare he had. I set down my book. Our custody agreement is clear. 2 weeks with her, 2 weeks with me. We just finished her 2 weeks. Custody agreements can be flexible when circumstances change. Not without mutual agreement, they can't. Patricia's expression hardened. This is exactly the kind of rigidity that made things difficult in your marriage. Delilah needs support right now, and Bryson would benefit from stability and routine, which means following the custody schedule we agreed on. I kept my voice level. I've been flexible this week. I've stayed here, helped out, made sure everything runs smoothly, but don't mistake that for weakness. No one is calling you weak. We're asking you to consider what's best for your son. What's best for my son is having 2 parents who stick to their commitments. Delilah will recover just fine with Trevor's help. Bryson needs to come home with me. She stood up, her face tight. We'll see what Delilah has to say about that. After she left, I sat by the pool, watching the water ripple in the artificial breeze from the resort's fans. I'd known this was coming. The attempt to leverage Delilah's medical crisis into a renegotiation of custody. Patricia had fought hard during the divorce to get Delilah primary custody, convinced that I was too focused on work, too rigid, too incapable of providing the kind of nurturing environment a child needed. The fact that we'd ended up with 50-50 custody had been a blow to her campaign. That evening, Trevor found me at the hotel bar. I was nursing a beer, trying to decompress from Patricia's ambush. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. I gestured to the empty stool. "Free country." He ordered a whiskey, and we sat in silence for a moment. Finally, he spoke. "Patricia talked to you today." "She did. For what it's worth, I told Delilah it was a bad idea. You've been more than reasonable this week. Pushing for extra custody time feels like overreach." I looked at him, surprised. Trevor had always been peripheral in my dealings with Delilah, present but not involved, supportive of her but not particularly engaged in the details. Hearing him acknowledge the situation felt unexpected. "Does Delilah know you feel that way?" I told her. She's conflicted. On one hand, she knows you're right about the schedule. On the other hand, her mother has a way of making her feel like she's failing if she doesn't fight for more time with Bryson. Patricia's been doing that since before the divorce. Trevor took a sip of his whiskey. "I know. I see it. Delilah's relationship with her mother is complicated. Patricia has very specific ideas about how things should be, and Delilah has spent most of her life trying to live up to them." It was the most honest conversation I'd ever had with Trevor. In the 2 years since he and Delilah had gotten together, we'd maintained a polite distance, cordial exchanges at drop-offs, brief texts coordinating schedules, nothing deeper. But sitting at the bar, both of us exhausted from managing the aftermath of Delilah's collapse, something shifted. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure. Did you know about the cleanse, the supplements she was taking?" He hesitated. I knew she was doing something. She'd been complaining about her weight, feeling sluggish. Her trainer sold her on this program, some combination of herbal supplements and meal replacement shakes. I thought it was another phase like the yoga intensive last year or the meditation retreat she did in the spring. I didn't realize it was dangerous. Did she seem different before she collapsed? She was irritable, tired. I assumed it was work stress. She'd been putting in long hours on a new project. And she was excited about the trip, so I thought once we got here, she'd relax. He turned his glass in his hands. "I should have paid more attention. You're not responsible for her choices." "Maybe not, but I'm her husband. I should have noticed she was pushing herself too hard." We sat with that for a moment. Then Trevor cleared his throat. "For what it's worth, I think you're a good father. Bryson talks about you all the time, the things you do together, the way you explain things to him. He feels safe with you." The compliment caught me off guard. "Thank you. I know Patricia can be intense, but she loves Bryson. She's just scared of losing access to him, the way she feels like she lost access to Delilah during your marriage. I never tried to keep Delilah away from her family. I know, but Patricia sees things through her own lens. In her mind, you took her daughter away, and the divorce proved it. Now she's determined not to let the same thing happen with her grandson." It was a more generous interpretation than I'd given Patricia credit for. I still thought she was manipulative and overbearing, but hearing Trevor explain it, I could see the fear underneath. The mother who'd watched her daughter struggle through a divorce and was now fighting to maintain some control over the pieces. "I'm not trying to keep Bryson away from anyone," I said, "but I'm also not going to let Patricia guilt Delilah into changing our agreement. Bryson needs consistency." "I agree, and I'll back you up on that, for what it's worth." We finished our drinks and went back to our respective hotels. That night, I called Bryson to say goodnight. He was staying with Delilah and Trevor while I stayed at the Holiday Inn, and we'd settled into a routine of evening calls. "Dad?" His voice was sleepy. "Hey, buddy. Just wanted to check in before bed." We watched a movie. Mom let me pick. I chose the one about the dinosaurs. "Nice choice. Did you have fun?" "Yeah, but I miss our apartment. When are we going home?" 2 more days, then you and I are flying back to Connecticut together. Does that sound good?" "Yeah. Can we go to the playground when we get back? The one with the big swings?" "Absolutely. First thing Saturday morning." "Okay. Love you, Dad." "Love you too, buddy." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, thinking about everything that had happened in the past week. Bryson lost at Disney, Delilah in the hospital, the fragile peace I'd brokered with Trevor, Patricia's maneuvering for more custody time, and underneath it all, the realization that co-parenting was never going to be simple, no matter how clear the custody agreement was. The next morning, I met Delilah for breakfast at the hotel restaurant. She texted asking if we could talk, just the two of us, and I'd agreed despite my reservations. She looked better than she had in the hospital, color back in her face, moving without the tentative slowness that had marked her first days out of bed. "Thank you for staying," she said once we'd ordered. "I know it wasn't easy, being here with my parents and Trevor. It's fine. Bryson needed it. Still, you didn't have to." She fiddled with her coffee cup. "My mom talked to you about extending custody." "She did. I told her it was a bad idea, that we have an agreement for a reason." I looked at her, searching for the catch. "You did?" "Yes, I know she means well, but she has a way of making everything more complicated than it needs to be. You've been good about the schedule. I'm not going to mess that up because of one bad week." "I appreciate that. But," she paused, "I do want to talk about something else. The holidays are coming up, and I was thinking maybe we could be a little more flexible about Thanksgiving and Christmas. Not change the core schedule, but maybe coordinate so Bryson can see everyone without feeling pulled in different directions." It was a reasonable request, the kind of thing mature co-parents did. "What did you have in mind?" "Thanksgiving is technically your year, but my parents are hosting at their place in Vermont. They've invited all of us, you, Bryson, even Vanessa if she wants to come. It would be a chance for Bryson to have everyone together, and my parents are trying to make more of an effort with you." I doubted Patricia was genuinely trying to make an effort, but Gerald might be. And the thought of Bryson being able to spend Thanksgiving with both sides of his family instead of feeling torn was appealing. Let me think about it, I said. I'll talk to Vanessa, see what her plans are. Fair enough. Delilah took a sip of her coffee. I'm also going to do the cardiac follow-up when I get home. Get a full workup, make sure there's nothing else going on. The hospital doctor was pretty clear that I need to take this seriously. Good. You scared the hell out of everyone. I know. I scared myself. She looked down. I think I've been so focused on trying to be this perfect version of myself, the fit wife, the organized mom, the successful professional, that I forgot to pay attention to what my body was actually telling me. The trainer made it sound so simple. Just follow the plan, take the supplements, and everything would fall into place. I didn't question it. You've always been like that, I said, not unkindly, looking for external solutions to internal problems. That's pretty harsh, but true. When we were married, every time you felt unhappy or stuck, you'd find some new program or routine or expert who promised to fix it. And when that didn't work, you'd move on to the next thing. She was quiet for a moment. You're right. I did do that. I still do that. She looked up at me. Is that why you left? I didn't leave. We both left. The marriage wasn't working for either of us. But you're the one who asked for the divorce, because I was tired of fighting, tired of feeling like nothing I did was ever enough. You wanted someone who was more spontaneous, more social, more engaged with your vision of the perfect life. I wanted someone who could be content with what we had instead of always chasing the next thing. We weren't compatible. We had some good times, though, she said softly. We did, and we made a great kid. That's not nothing. We finished breakfast in a more comfortable silence than we'd managed in years. There was something about nearly losing her, about watching her vulnerable in a hospital bed, that had stripped away some of the bitterness. She was still the person who'd frustrated me for years, but she was also Bryson's mother, and she was trying. The last 2 days in Orlando passed quietly. Bryson and I went to an aquarium, played arcade games at a massive indoor entertainment complex, and had dinner with Delilah and Trevor one evening. Patricia and Gerald kept their distance, sensing perhaps that their window for manipulation had closed. On the flight home, Bryson fell asleep against my shoulder, exhausted from the week. I looked out the window at the clouds and thought about how much had changed in 7 days. Delilah's collapse had been frightening, but it had also forced a kind of honesty between us that we'd been avoiding since the divorce. Trevor had turned out to be more of an ally than I'd expected, and Bryson, resilient in the way kids are, had weathered the chaos better than any of us. When we landed in Hartford, Vanessa was waiting at the airport with her kids. They mobbed Bryson with hugs, and he immediately launched into a story about the aquarium, the fear and trauma of being lost already fading into the background of his 6-year-old memory. How was it, really? Vanessa asked as we walked to the car. Weird, complicated, but better than I expected. Did Patricia behave herself? More or less. Delilah actually shut down the custody extension idea herself. Vanessa raised her eyebrows. That's progress. It is. And how are you feeling? About all of it? I thought about the question. Tired, relieved it's over, but also, I don't know, maybe a little hopeful that we can figure out how to do this better. The co-parenting thing. You're allowed to have hope, you know. It doesn't make you naive. That night, after Bryson was asleep in his room and I'd unpacked and done laundry and returned all my work emails, I sat on my couch with a beer and finally let myself process everything. The panic of that first phone call from Disney, the helplessness of being in Connecticut while my son was lost in Florida, the strange intimacy of sitting in a hospital room with my ex-wife, the tentative alliance with Trevor, the realization that Patricia's hostility came from fear, not malice. My phone buzzed. A text from Delilah. Bryson home safe? Sound asleep. I wrote back. Good. Thank you again for everything. I know it wasn't easy. Take care of yourself. Get that cardiac workup. I will. And I meant what I said about Thanksgiving. The offer stands. I stared at the message for a long moment. The old me would have immediately declined, would have seen it as a trap or an obligation I didn't want. But maybe Vanessa was right. Maybe I was allowed to have hope. Let me talk to Vanessa, I texted back. I'll let you know. Over the next few weeks, life settled back into routine. Bryson went to school. I went to work. We did homework and dinner and bedtime stories. He didn't talk much about Disney, except occasionally to mention something funny that had happened before everything went wrong. The trauma of being lost seemed to have faded, replaced by the resilience of a kid who knew he was loved. Delilah kept me updated on her medical appointments. The cardiologist found no underlying heart disease, which was a relief, but emphasized that the electrolyte imbalance had been severe enough to cause real damage if it had continued. She was working with a nutritionist now, learning how to actually fuel her body instead of following whatever trend promised transformation. In mid-November, I called Delilah about Thanksgiving. Vanessa's in, I said. Her family was going to do a quiet thing at home, but the kids are excited about Vermont and seeing Bryson, so if the offer's still open, we'll come. There was a pause, then her voice warm with surprise. Really? Thank you. My parents will be thrilled. I'm doing this for Bryson, I clarified, but I'm willing to try. I know, and I appreciate it. Thanksgiving at Patricia and Gerald's house in Vermont was exactly as overwhelming as I'd expected. The house was enormous, decorated with the kind of tasteful autumn touches that came from catalogs and professional designers. There were 18 people for dinner, Delilah's extended family, including cousins and aunts I'd met exactly once during our marriage. But Vanessa was there, running interference with her usual competence. Her kids gave Bryson a built-in playgroup, and Trevor, surprisingly, turned out to be a decent buffer against Patricia's more pointed comments. Gerald pulled me aside after dinner while everyone was having pie. I wanted to apologize, he said without preamble, for how Patricia and I behaved during the divorce. We were protecting our daughter, but we weren't fair to you. I didn't know what to say. Gerald had never been openly hostile, but he hadn't exactly defended me either. I appreciate that, I said finally. You're a good father. I see that now. Bryson's lucky to have you. It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation. It didn't erase years of tension, but it was something, a small shift in the foundation of our fractured family. That night, watching Bryson play with his cousins in front of the fireplace, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, contentment. Not happiness exactly, but a sense that maybe we were all going to be okay, that the divorce hadn't ruined everything, that Bryson was going to grow up knowing he was loved by imperfect people doing their best. Delilah found me in the kitchen later, helping Vanessa with dishes. Thank you for coming, she said. It meant a lot, to all of us. It was good, I said honestly. Different than I expected, but good. Maybe we can do Christmas too? Not here. That's your year with Bryson. But maybe we could do a joint thing before you take him to your parents? An afternoon where he can see everyone? I looked at her. Really looked at her. She seemed healthier than she had in years. Less frantic. More grounded. Like maybe the collapse had taught her something. Yeah, I said. We can do that. December came cold and snowy. Bryson and I built snowmen in our apartment complex's yard. We went ice skating at the local rink. We picked out a Christmas tree from a lot run by a local church and decorated it with ornaments I'd saved from when he was a baby. The joint Christmas gathering happened on December 22nd at Delilah and Trevor's house. It was smaller than Thanksgiving. Just Delilah, Trevor, Patricia, Gerald, Vanessa, and her family. We exchanged presents, ate too much food, and watched Bryson open gifts with the unbridled enthusiasm of a 6-year-old. At one point, I found myself standing in the kitchen with Trevor and Gerald, talking about nothing in particular, sports, work, the weather. It was the kind of mundane conversation that happens in families, and for a moment, I let myself imagine that this was our normal, that we'd figured out how to be a family, even if it looked nothing like what any of us had originally planned. Patricia approached me before we left. I wanted to say something, she began, her voice formal. I was wrong about you. During the divorce, I thought, well, it doesn't matter what I thought. What matters is that I see now how much you care about Bryson, and I'm grateful he has you. It was as close to an apology as I was going to get from Patricia, and I accepted it with as much grace as I could muster. Thank you. I know we all want what's best for him. We do. She paused. I'm working on being less controlling. It's not easy, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. On Christmas Eve, Bryson and I drove to my parents' house in Massachusetts. They'd been following the saga of Orlando with a mixture of concern and bemusement, relieved that everyone was okay, but also quietly pleased that Delilah's family was finally acknowledging I wasn't the villain they'd made me out to be. My mother hugged Bryson tight when we arrived, then pulled me aside. You look happy, she said. I'm okay. No, more than okay. You look settled, like you've made peace with something. I thought about it. Maybe I have. It's still complicated. The co-parenting, the family dynamics, all of it. But it's working. Better than it was. That's all anyone can ask for. We spent Christmas at my parents' house, eating my mother's famous ham and playing board games and watching Bryson tear through presents with the same enthusiasm he'd shown at Delilah's. On Christmas night after Bryson was asleep in my childhood bedroom, I sat with my father in his study. You've done well, he said, nursing a whiskey. With everything. The divorce, the custody arrangement, handling Delilah's family. I'm proud of you. My father wasn't given to emotional declarations, so the words landed with weight. Thanks, Dad. It's not easy being the steady one. The one who keeps showing up, who follows through, who doesn't make a scene. People don't always appreciate it. No, they don't. But Bryson does. Maybe not consciously, not yet, but he will. He'll know you were the one he could count on. I hoped he was right. We drove back to Connecticut on December 26th, and the rest of the week passed in the pleasant haze of post-holiday quiet. Bryson went back to school on January 2nd, and I went back to work, and life resumed its normal rhythm. In mid-January, Delilah texted me, clean bill of health from the cardiologist. Everything looks good. Thank you for pushing me to follow up. Glad to hear it, I wrote back. Keep taking care of yourself. I am. And I wanted to let you know, I'm cutting ties with that trainer. Found someone new who actually believes in sustainable health instead of quick fixes. Good call. That weekend, when I picked up Bryson from Delilah's house, she walked out with him to the car. Can we talk for a minute? She asked. I nodded, and she sent Bryson to wait in the car. I've been thinking a lot about what happened in Orlando, she said. About how I ended up in the hospital, about what I've been doing to myself for years, and I realize now that a lot of it was about trying to prove something, to my parents, to Trevor, to you, that I was fine, that I had everything together, that the divorce didn't break me. You don't have to prove anything to me. I know, but I wanted to. I wanted to show you that you made a mistake, that I was the one who had it figured out. She smiled ruefully. Turns out almost killing myself with a juice cleanse isn't exactly the flex I thought it was. No, it's not. I'm sorry. For making things harder than they needed to be. For letting my mom push the custody thing in Orlando. For all the times I made you feel like you weren't enough. I was quiet for a moment. I wasn't always easy to be married to either. I know that. No, but you were steady. Reliable. And I took that for granted. We both made mistakes, but we're doing better now. That's what matters. She nodded, then surprised me by reaching out and squeezing my hand briefly. Thank you for being a good dad. Bryson's lucky to have you. He's lucky to have both of us. As I drove home with Bryson chattering in the back seat about his week with his mom, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The divorce had been painful, messy, full of resentment and recrimination. But somehow, through Delilah's collapse and the forced intimacy of those days in Orlando, we'd found a way to move past it. We weren't friends exactly, but we were something. Co-parents who respected each other, who could coordinate holidays without warfare, who were both trying to do right by the kid we'd made together. It wasn't the family I'd imagined when Bryson was born, but it was the one we had, and it was working. That night, after Bryson was asleep, I poured myself a drink and sat on my couch, thinking about the past 6 months. The terror of that first phone call from Disney, the long flight to Orlando, the hospital room, the conversations with Trevor, the tentative peace with Patricia and Gerald, the Thanksgiving in Vermont, and the Christmas at Delilah's house. None of it had been easy, but all of it had been worth it. My phone buzzed. Vanessa, how was the handoff? Good. Really good, actually. Progress? Yeah, real progress. Proud of you, little brother. I smiled, set down my phone, and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in years. Optimistic about the future. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was good enough. Because Bryson was happy and healthy and loved. Because Delilah was taking care of herself. Because we'd all figured out how to be a family in a new configuration. The story didn't have a dramatic ending. There was no grand reconciliation, no shocking revelation, no redemptive arc that fixed everything. Just people doing their best to navigate a complicated situation with as much grace as they could manage. And sometimes, that was enough.